Mark, the movie man
Yes.
Krawcheck, once again, the tables are turned. I am not just guest appearing on your awesome weekly live stream, the Spoiler Room, talking about movies. Now you're back here on Kicking the Seat. I appreciate you. I don't have, we're not coming down to a dungeon, picking up a drink and all that other stuff. We're just, here hanging out. I guess we are in our respective basements.
We're in our respective basements, but it's not like the spoiler room where it's a dungeon and all that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a dungeon. Well, it could be a dungeon. There are shackles on the wall, but that's beside the point.
You have your very own red room. No,
I do.
the fact that we both get that reference, man.
That's sad.
But dungeons are appropriate for the movie we're going to be discussing tonight.
They are.
There are dungeons in at 1313 Mockingbird Lane.
Indeed.
We are, of course, talking about Rob Zombie's The Munsters. Now, I believe it was on one of your Patreon shows the week that the teaser for this dropped, and
Yes.
it lit the internet on fire like a month or so ago, maybe a little bit more. I have no track of time. And as I recall, I was on that hate bandwagon. I'm like, this looks terrible. Everyone's criticizing it because the audio is out of sync and it sounds tinny and it looks cheap and what the hell's up with that font? I am convinced, after having watched The Munsters on Netflix over the weekend, that trailer was rushed out before it was finished, because I did not see any hint of those problems in the finished product. In fact, Mark, hold on to your seat. I have no idea. We have not talked about this before.
No, we haven't. No idea what's going on. So
I'm going to tell you, and you might end this show. You might nope out on me, but I'm calling it right now. I don't care if this movie is sitting at 43% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes or 38% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. For once, the audience and the critics agree. I'm calling The Munsters 2022 by Rob Zombie one of the best films of the year.
Wow. I don't think I would go that far, but I will say I enjoyed it. I just finished my review of it. Actually, it's going to be posted up this week sometime. And I had thought about whether or not I was going to do a review or not. And I decided to review because my wife and I sat down and watched it. And my wife and I do have varying tastes in film.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Completely shocking. But she sat down with her package of cheese popcorn, cheese puff, and it would paired appropriately enough with this very cheesy movie that I found entertaining. I did laugh out loud a number of times. I was smiling. I said this in the review that it's not like it's, for me, it wasn't like, oh my God, groundbreaking or anything. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, we actually have a film that takes place in the same world as Batman and Robin. And I actually kind of dig this. It's not, the best film for me, but it was entertaining. It was very watchable. It was visually, I love visuals, as we've talked about many times. And so for me, visually, it was impressive. That what impressed me the most was that they had the gimmick, they committed to the gimmick fully. Sometimes you get shows like this or movies like this that will do a gimmick, but then it tapers off. It's like what they open up with, and then as the plot moves along, they kind of fade. No, they stick to the gimmick, both visually and for the characters, from start to finish, and mad props for that. This is Rob Zombie all the way. If you've ever watched any of his videos, this is visually the way it's edited and just everything. It's how I put it was, and people do not take this the wrong way. This is a film that would easily have fit on Nickelodeon of the late 90s, early 2000s. And people would watch it and probably dig it. Kids would dig it. People, younger audiences on Nickelodeon. It's that type of movie. And yeah, it's fun. I wouldn't say for me, best film, one of the best films of 2022, but it was far more entertaining than that trailer led it to believe.
Right. And, I am probably going to lose some credibility, or, some people are going to take a step back when I say this. But I mean, is it, you know, am I putting it on the same par as like, Citizen Kane or, RRR or some, Oscar bait movie that's going to be coming out this month through the end of the year? Not in terms of, themes or, highfalutenness, as it were, but as far as what it set out to accomplish, it's quite amazing. It's a Netflix released movie. There were 2 big Netflix released movies this week. One was Blonde, that's
Mhm.
getting all the praise and the attention. I think that movie is absolutely trash. Or as I put it in my review, it's a phenomenally gorgeous, innovatively shot, amazing film to look at that I cannot recommend to anybody,
Mhm.
because of, how it goes about telling its story. The Munsters is visual spectacle. It is Rob Zombie at his peak. And, take away the music video kind of style.
Mhm.
There is a lot of that. There's a musical number or two in this movie, but if you just look at the set design, I mean, my God, the lab in which Herman Munster
Oh.
was created, it's as if, Richard Brake, the amazing Richard Brake, plays the mad scientist type who, the Dr. Frankenstein-esque
Mhm.
character, and he has his Igor-style sidekick. They're, grave robbers, and they're trying to build a Frankenstein monster. The lab that they're in, and the way that they portray these characters is almost like a Mad Magazine parody of a Hammer film that
Mhm.
goes right up to the border of, if you just ask the actor to tone it down a little bit, this could be a modern day Hammer film, and a modern day portrayal. He's wonderful, and I wanted to freeze frame, like, every time we get to a new set piece, just to pause it and look at all the detail that went into this. The costuming is phenomenal. The music, the lighting, everything works aesthetically. I've heard complaints that it's, too gaudy and too big and too much for 2 hours. It's not a Joel Schumacher movie where it's just sensory overload of, like, strobes and gaudy lighting and, bad colors and everything. This thing is just artistic within an inch of its life, and given what Rob Zombie has been doing for the last 10 years, I've watched all of the movies he's put out because I was a huge Rob Zombie fan,
Mhm.
but I have not liked really anything he's done outside of the fascination of, wow, I guess he got another movie made somehow. 31 3 from Hell, just all
Yeah.
this. He keeps going back to this weird well. And aside from Richard Brake, who, can't really do any wrong anywhere,
Yeah.
those movies I think are pretty forgettable.
Mm.
Here, it's as if he took all of the residual money that he made from those movies and it added up to like $250,000 because this thing looks and feels expensive. It feels like a huge production. It doesn't feel like something that should be dumped on Netflix. I mean, it's a universal picture.
Mhm.
Maybe they're like, no one's gonna come out and see the Munsters. We'll put it on Netflix. I don't know. But you used the word smile a minute ago. I was smiling from the opening of this movie up until the very end. It just made me feel really good. It's comfort food in the best possible way, and what it accomplishes that so many modern day reboots, retellings, whatever, fail to do is they don't try and make it a modern film. It is an adaptation of the sitcom that tells the story that the sitcom never did. It's the origin story that leads, like, the end of this movie is literally the opening of the Munsters TV show. It shows you how they got to that house,
Mhm.
and it's just a lot of fun, and it's pure, and it feels like a movie of its time. It reminds me sort of like I know the Brady Bunch movie in the middle mid '90s.
Right.
They brought the Bradys into the modern world and kind of,
Mhm.
played with that anachronism. This doesn't exactly do that, but it has that pure sense of, this is what we loved about the Munsters, and it's still cool, and we're not gonna try and change it or say, "Isn't this stupid because it's chintzy and old?" Rob Zombie loves these characters, he loves the aesthetic. It basically helped inspire his entire career. So, yeah, that's why I'm calling this one of the best films of the year, because it goes above and beyond in, achieving what it set out to do.
Nice. Nice. I mean, I again, I'm not hating on it. There's a lot of hate. I enjoyed it a little bit more, especially when it got into when they hit suburbia, when they have to go to suburbia and the whole gimmick with, getting the house net. That part, that was really where the film got me. I didn't mind the world of the Munsters where they lived in Transylvania. again, that was really a little bit more by what I kind of expected it, but you're right, the set designs and everything on it far more involved than I thought. And I think you hit the nail on the head. This really does feel a bit like Mad Magazine or Cracked, settings and everything, because they would have that same thing. You'd get a single panel for a lab scene or whatever that would be a parody, and it'd have so much detail in it. You could just sit on that page forever, just picking out all the little like Easter eggs and stuff that they would put in it. And visually, yeah, the aesthetics in here alone, production design was fantastic. But what I want to go to is, now a lot of people have dogged for many years, and it's like, come on, if you were a Hollywood director and you had a chance and your wife told you, hey, could I be in your movie, you're gonna say, what? No, I'm sorry, honey, no, you're not gonna be. Right, you put her in the movie, especially if the producers say, yeah, go ahead, I don't care. Sherry Moon Zombie, this is probably one of her best performances. Yeah, I'm going on record
Yes.
and saying it. This is one of her best performances she has. You look at her, you don't see Sherry Moon Zombie. The makeup is that good. In fact, I would argue that if they didn't have her name in it, people wouldn't have guessed that that was actually Sherry Moon Zombie. She barely recognized, with the makeup and the wig and everything. She looks far more like Lily from the TV show than she does Sherry Moon Zombie in this, for me. And I think it's one of her better performances. I what really helped sell it for me too were the characters, the actors, because they're playing already established loved characters, so that's a hard challenge in and of itself. Now Sherry Moon Zombie's Lily is done a little bit more over the top than Lily was at the TV show, not by much but just a little, but
Yeah.
it's on purpose, and I think people are missing that point. A lot of this stuff is on purpose. Jeff Daniel Phillips was a great Herman. His whole
Yes.
his laugh was perfect. And even the Count, who people oh God, the Count looks awful. I loved the Count, and I loved the Doctor Who references. We have two connections to Doctor Who in here. We have one, Sylvester McCoy. God, it was great seeing him back on screen and just having fun as Igor, the right hand man of the Count. And then who played Zoya, Catherine Schell. She was in a lot of things, but she was also in a series of Doctor Who episodes. So you had two Doctor Who. He put in people that he wanted in this, and he's having fun making it, and everybody's having fun making it, and it's a fun movie to watch. You
I
know,
think, yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it's a PG movie. Is it a family movie? I don't necessarily know, because this feels like it's Rob Zombie's version of PG. Because some of the monster makeup, like when they're in
yeah,
Transylvania, it's like in the opening kind of grave robbing scene, Dr. Wolfgang, played by Richard Brake, and Jorge Garcia's, I almost said Jerry Garcia.
whoop.
His Igor kind of sidekick Floop, they come across a zombie, and it's a comedic scene, but the zombie is kind of, scary
Oh yeah,
looking. Plus, there's like a couple, like 3 or 4 jokes throughout the entire 2 hours that are, if you're a parent watching this with your family, you're gonna sit there and go, "I hope my kids don't understand what that means." Like,
hey,
there was
when
a whole bit where grandpa was talking, or the count, this
yeah,
is
yeah,
before he was grandpa, he was
grandpa,
the
yeah.
count, talking to Igor about, like, coming with them to, Hollywood, California or whatever,
Yeah.
and Igor is like, "Well, Mr. Jones or whatever wants, he's looking, I have to stay behind because he's looking for a pool boy." And the count is like, "He doesn't have a pool." And then they toast, and he says,
Yes.
"Bottoms up." And he's like, "That's what
Yeah,
Mr.
what
Jones says."
Jones
And the count
says.
is like, uh,
Yeah, but
but
again, but that's okay. Jokes like that, if the kids do get it, they're gonna get it. And if they do get it, they understand what it is. If they don't get it, it's gonna fly over their head. I mean, you bring that up. I'm like, look at Jumanji. I still highly have this wonderful audience experience where I'm watching Jumanji, and this mom brought in 5 girls. I think one was her daughter, and the other 4 were friends, to watch Jumanji because it was a ha film, it was a comedy involving kids and video games and The Rock and that. And I'm like, okay. So when you get the scene to where Jack Black, who is, the teenage girl in Jack Black's body, he hugs the one very suave looking guy, the young guy, and he walks away. She looks down and she just goes, well, she goes, these things are amazing, because to imply that she's never experienced, for obvious reasons, being aroused. And remember the daughter asking in plain voice, going, "What's amazing, mommy? What is amazing? What's she?" And I'm just like, that's gonna be an awkward ride home.
Well, the other thing that just sticks out is there's this bit where Dr. Wolfgang goes on this TV show to kind of
Mhm.
debut his creation, Herman Munster, for all the world, and it goes horribly wrong. And at one point, he ends up freaking out and saying like, "Eat my shit, kiss my ass," and they bleep it, but you can clearly see him saying it. They don't like digitize the mouth or
Yeah.
something because they wouldn't have in 1960.
No, no.
Um, but it's just like, yeah, I'm surprised that got into a PG rated movie because
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
little bit more than parental guidance. But I guess I figure if the kids are, not old enough to read lips, they won't know. But yeah, I'm getting hung up on it, but it's just to say that it's a family film.
Mhm.
It's very enjoyable, and I feel like Rob Zombie has been almost messing around in the wrong genre for years. Like he should just be making edgy family horror films.
It it goes right along with Fred Olin Ray, who, if you look at the body work of Fred Olin Ray, uh, you'll be flabbergasted at some of the films that he's made. This is the guy who made, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, and he's made these other, but then he's made Emmy-winning family programming as well, and it's filmmakers get pigeonholed into one thing, and I think you really, one of the things, and I'm trying not to speak in hyperbole, I try not to generalize, but you can find a lot of evidence to where it's been lost on family films. And I'm not saying family films have to be, you give them a pass for being bad. No, they still have to be competent, which this is very much is. But I think people hold films almost to the same standards as, say, Belfast or Schindler's List or something. Many reviewers out there, at least, and that's not you. You can't really do that. I mean, because it's a different type of film. It's not focused necessarily on the drama and the emotional movement. This is to entertain and to keep things moving, and it does. This film clips along nicely for its runtime. It never feels like it really slows down at all. It just gets you one after another. It keeps going. And again, unapologetic. I mentioned that in I used that word in my review. This film is unapologetic in what it is. It's like Rob Zombie made this film because he wanted to make it, and he goes, "Here you go. You don't like it? I don't give a rat's ass." He did it never felt like he made choices or compromised something because it's like, well, people might not like this or get this, or this might be a little too weird visually. Nah. He said, if I'm gonna do a little wee wee wee,
All
when her,
slide whistles
the
and
slide
yeah, the whole
whistles
bit. Yeah.
and the little extra card behind Herman and Lily when they meet, the little
The
stars
hearts.
and the
Yeah.
hearts, and if you're gonna just do that, you're like, wow, that's the equivalent of the Biff Bam of the 1960s Batman, which is why I was watching this going, I enjoyed this a bit better than Batman and Robin, but we all know I've changed my opinion over the years of Batman and Robin. Batman Forever is the one movie now that can burn in the fiery pits of Satan. But whereas Batman and Robin, I get what they were going for now, and this film could nestle. You could have George Clooney and Chris O'Donnell show up from their versions from Batman and Robin show up in here, and maybe it's because of all the puns, which puns are a little hard to sell for me, but it fit right into this world.
It would, but I on the on the opposite side, I gotta push back a bit, only because I think if and I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I talked about Batman and Robin and Batman Forever,
Yeah.
on a number of shows, but I think the problem is those movies cannot follow the Tim Burton movies.
Oh no,
because you
no.
start off with a serious tone of like
Mhm.
this is Batman. This is inspired more by what Frank Miller was doing than by the Adam West
Right.
TV show. But
Mhm.
then to have Joel Schumacher come along and act almost as if he'd never seen the Burton films and his only knowledge of Batman, just it's like he skipped over the 30 years
Mhm.
of comics and went, between the 60s Batman and when he started making the movies, and just said his whole concept of Batman is the 60s TV show.
Yeah.
If you want to just go that route in some kind of a pocket universe or have that come out first and then you evolve into Tim Burton, that's fine, but you can't go backwards because it's just a giant waste of time. With the Munsters, this is Rob Zombie's vision through and through. There was no grim and gritty monsters,
No, no,
you know.
no. He
But
could have easily gone that way though, being Rob Zombie.
right, and I think that's why that might have been one of the reasons that people were put off by the concept of him doing it, because I don't think anyone expected him to do Rob Zombie's, like, hard R monsters. They were probably just like, "He's gonna adapt some goofy '60s TV show. What's he doing?" And he did that exact thing. This movie, I nudged my wife because we watched it together. It's high praise. You've got your movie nachos at the cinema. My wife has her grocery shopping list. Usually when we're sitting down to watch a movie on the weekend, it's like something I wanna watch that she doesn't really care about, and she'll be like, "Okay, we'll watch it together. I'll make the grocery list while this is on." If she puts the grocery list down and it is not finished by the time the movie's over, that means it's a solid,
It's a win. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I nudged her at one point, I said, "This is the most romantic movie I think I've seen in years." Because Lily and Herman,
Mhm.
they meet cute. They instantly are attracted to each other. They like each other as people or monsters
Mhm.
or whatever. It's unabashedly affectionate. There's no bit where, like in so many modern relationship movies, sitcoms, comedies, whatever, because of like the so-called evolution of sexual dynamics, he has to be a bumbling idiot and she has to be put upon and putting him down and like, she's the brains of the operation. No,
Right.
they are equals.
Mhm.
And that was something that was clear in the TV show, which I didn't watch a whole lot of, but it's also a very kind of old-fashioned notion. But this movie, I think, feels like 20 years before the Munsters TV sitcom. I actually
Mhm.
paused the
Mhm.
movie and I watched a 10-minute clip of the Munsters on YouTube. They have their own YouTube channel where they have
Right.
clips of the old show, and I watched it just to kind of look at how the performances lined up and
Mhm.
what was the general kind of feel of the sitcom at that time, because I hadn't watched it in like 30 years. And it fits. This feels like younger versions of these characters who are eventually going to grow into, Fred
Mhm.
Gwynn and Al Lewis and the rest. Um, the imitations aren't perfect, but they feel like, again, younger people that are going to grow, because we're not the same people we were, 20 years
No.
ago, and neither should these characters. I mean, you're right. Sherry Moon Zombie, I recognized her in the role, right?
Mm.
She didn't quite disappear for me, but I think that's partially because I loved what she was doing so much that I was like, Sherry Moon Zombie has probably never been better. I'm so happy for her through the entire movie. I was thinking of
Same.
her alternately as Lily and Sherry Moon. I'm like, I
Mhm.
love Lily Munster, and God damn it, I love Sherry Moon Zombie as Lily Munster.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a worthy prequel for sure. I think people, as my son would always say, and I've used the term before, look at the original Munsters with rose-colored nostalgia, missing, what that show actually was. Just, the cheese was definitely there. The camp is somewhat there, but definitely the cheese. But you're right about the dynamic between Herman and Lily in that uh, uh, Lily recognizes Herman's faults, but at the same time, she's able to steer him in the right direction, but she never really put him down. She just kind of, you know, will bring up topics that he might not have think of because Herman's always been a little bit more impulsive. But and in here, kind of the same thing. And what was great is watching them kind of switch modes, especially Herman Munster. That's why I liked what Herman did, especially what Jeff Daniel Phillips did with Herman, is that you know he'd be kind of a little bit more over the top silly, and then he'd cut for a minute the way he would talk or whatnot, making you realize, oh, he knows how he is, he's being this way on purpose because he feels he has to put up this personality. But then we get the glimmers of what Herman actually is like, and Lily brings that out in him, and we see that in here. And you're right, the romance in here isn't done jadedly. It isn't done with sarcasm or with snark like you get, especially in romantic comedies. It's not done. It's wholesome and honest. It's a quirky film that is just a delight. Like you said, comfort food. Um, I was hard pressed to see what really was wrong with it. I'm like, it's not for everyone's taste, no, but that doesn't make it bad just because it may not be for you. I guarantee you sit down a group of young kids or whatnot, and they're gonna chuckle, they're gonna laugh, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I have not read really any. I haven't had time since I finished watching it
Mm,
to read the criticisms of the movie, except for like the little blurbs on Rotten Tomatoes. You get like
mm.
a couple of sentences from the
Yeah,
critics and stuff, and it's like it's loud, it's long, it's gaudy, and all of this stuff. And I can't get inside people's heads, and I'm sure that I've enjoyed things that other people haven't. And in fact, I know I've got the VHS box for one right over my shoulder.
yeah, I see that.
Freddie got fingered.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I also think that this is the same, of the same generation, or at least the generation that understands the nostalgia and the kitsch value of something like, Pee-wee's Playhouse, or, Tim Burton's oeuvre, that made him famous. And I feel like this kind of slides right into it. Like, are you going to tell me that you love Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but you hate the Munsters? It's
Yeah.
maybe it's just because we haven't seen something as audacious and weird and unabashed as this in decades. Everything is kind of bogged down in self-seriousness, and we're not allowed to have like fun anymore. But it's a fun movie. I feel like my impulse was like, I want to put this on just on TV in the background every Halloween. It's gonna be like A Christmas Story, but for Halloween.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, this definitely could be a just a Halloween traditional view, something you put on while you have the Halloween party going on, or you're handing out trick or treats. Yeah, you have this on in the background. You don't necessarily have to concentrate hard on it, but again, none of this makes it a bad film. I mean, for me, I think the only thing that got me, and I don't know if it was an homage or if whatever you want to call it, ripoff, homage, he did totally steal the storyline from Young Frankenstein. So he's a fan of Young Frankenstein as far as it coming to Herman Munster. So I'm just putting
In
that out there
Oh, with the swapped brains. Yes.
with the swapped brains, like from start to finish, even some of the dialogue. It just, I'm like, that part I was like, okay, that's a little too on the nose, Rob. You could have maybe switched it up a little bit. But again, whatever you want to call it, I found it amusing that they took that approach to it. I'm like, oh, are they actually going? Oh, yeah, he is. He's fully committing to, yep, the swapped brains
Well,
thing.
help me out
Um,
here. Um, did we ever get an origin story for Herman Munster in the TV show, to your knowledge?
Not that I know of. No, I mean, I
Oh,
watched it. I watched it because it was on syndication. I'd watch it in between, like they do, like the Ma and Pa Kettle on Sundays, and then they'd show some other older shows or whatnot, and I'd watch them on Sundays. So I don't think they ever gave an origin. I think they discussed his origins, but I don't think they ever actually like did a like flashback or whatever for it. But I don't quote me on that. They might have. I didn't watch all of the seasons, but
because here's how I can defend, if I had to, and this is wild speculation, but The Munsters was on 1964. Young Frankenstein came out in 1974. So
that's
who's ripping
true.
off who?
Yeah, well, that is if
If they
Herman's
did, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
origins,
If the
right,
swamp brain thing is part of
right.
that, then hey, maybe Mel Brooks is the hack. Wait, no.
That,
Uh,
actually, funny you mentioned that review on IMDb, because that's where you get some wonderful reviews. Mentions just that Rob Zombie is a hack. So
no, I mean, okay. I would have said that about, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I mean, and I do need to go back and watch Lords of Salem again. I hated that movie. A lot of Rob Zombie fans stick up for it a great
I
deal.
really enjoy that movie quite a bit.
Then again, full disclaimer, I think, or disclosure, I think I did see that during that weird period where I was getting very little sleep for like months on end. So I might
Mm,
just have been too cranky to appreciate it. But I also
could
have no
be.
desire to go back and give it another shot.
Sure.
But like the movies that he has done since, I'll call it Halloween 2,
Mhm.
um, I feel like those are the works, and maybe I'll give Lords of Salem a pass because I know he was trying to do something different and go in a new creative direction. But other stuff, I feel like those are the films of a hack. Someone is kind of going back to the well, making cheap movies that he can get made, quote unquote, for the fans. But
Mhm.
the Munsters is the work of a passionate artist and filmmaker who wants to take the things that he loves from his childhood and help the world understand not only why he loves those things, but also a bit about himself too.
Yeah, and you know, I don't fault a filmmaker at all. In fact, I saw another review where they say, "Well, this is just another Rob Zombie vanity project." I'm like, I don't really take that as a I'm like, I don't think that's a fair criticism because I'm like, there's many filmmakers out there who have made films they wanted to make. And if they become, if suddenly they're like best picture fodder, no one ever says, oh, well, this is a Steven Spielberg vanity project. Like, Steven Spielberg wanted to make what the story of about World War II for years, but never once, I don't think I've ever saw someone said, you know, Saving Private Ryan is just another Steven Spielberg vanity project. You know what I mean, though. You know what I'm saying with that.
Well, yeah, but you're to your point, it's all about the acclaim because if that movie had
Right.
been terrible or not well received or had been a dud,
Mm-hmm.
then that would have been like, oh, it's just a Spielberg vanity project because he's wanted to make it for you. I mean, if you think about it honestly, every film is a vanity project of the filmmaker because they're like, I feel like I am qualified and I'm the person who can tell this story the best. I'm gonna do it.
Right.
Which is it's a harsh thing to say, but yeah, that is an ego-driven, vain notion, but it's also the only way art gets made.
You need that confidence, though. You
Yes.
can't have someone going in. If you have someone going in going, oh, yeah, sure, I can do it. You get things like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, where, they did, okay, you're giving me the project. Sure. Yeah. All right. Whereas you get The Lost Boys done by the same director. And that was a project where he got the script and goes, I'm not sure because it was initially tailored towards a younger audience. He retailers it going, there's a story here that I can tell. He helps retailer it, and it becomes one of the all-time classic vampire films that actually was genre changing. But it was him. He felt confident enough that he could take that story and tailor it to a better audience, and he did. I mean, I can't, for people who say, oh, he puts, for better or worse, oh, he put Sherry Moon's on because it's a wife. Come on, if you had the money and the opportunity and you had a chance to put someone you really like into a movie, why not? And they make films, for the good or bad. I'm just saying is that people faulting him for that because there was so much hatred coming out. Oh, look, Sherry Moon Zombie is going to be Lily. I'm like, yeah, I don't care as long as she does a good job, which she did. You
Well,
know.
and that's the thing, and I've always liked Sherry Moon Zombie, her presence in Rob Zombie's films,
Yeah.
sometimes more than others, but I can also understand because there are times, like I think it was in Three from Hell. I don't remember much about
Mhm.
that movie, but I disliked pretty much everything about that film. And but the thing is, bless Rob Zombie for not listening to those critics because if he had and he stopped putting her in movies because people are like, "Oh, the people are going to show up because they're annoyed by my wife," then we wouldn't have gotten this great performance as Lily Munster.
Right.
Because this makes me think, could she I feel like Sherry Moon Zombie almost has the stigma of a porn actress. Like she's been in Rob Zombie movies, but like nothing else.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's blacklisted. I don't know if she just doesn't want to do anything except her husband's movies. But, she has given some really striking performances in her career in these genre films, and including the Munsters, where I'm like, I would love to see her in the hands of someone else in more high profile pictures.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of performers like that. I mean, we talked about it back when we talked about Jay and Silent Bob reboot, where you had me on your show, and we mentioned on how, you know, Harley Quinn Smith has talent, and it'd be interesting to see her in something other than something directed by her father, which she was. She's in a show that I think got renewed for a second and third. We've talked about, you know, got renewed for another season or whatnot. She's done a couple other projects where people have said, yeah, she's decent in the role. And, you know, I think maybe that's what it is that if people saw Sherry in roles that weren't directed by her husband and she showed talent there, people might back off. But I also think it's trendy, especially nowadays, and I'll probably get flamed for it, but whatever. It's trendy to hate something once it explodes on the scene, to hate,
Oh, sure.
or like something just because everybody's liking it. We've had that discussion before. The subconscious peer pressure or the subconscious influence of the masses, where you don't even realize it might be affecting your opinion, but it does on something, whether it's good or bad. You know, me personally, I thoroughly enjoyed Maverick. I thoroughly enjoyed Maverick,
The Top Gun sequel.
the
Yeah.
the Top Gun sequel. Do I think it's as phenomenal as some people mention? No, but I think it's wonderful. But I think part of the appeal that people have is subconsciously they're maybe influenced by it. Oh yeah, this is what, you know. It's a great film. Don't get me wrong, entertaining, by sure. But for some of the accolades it gets, I'm just like, okay. I mean, that's how you feel. That's awesome. Would you have if people were just okay on the film rather than, you know?
Well, I mean, that's what drives clicks, just saying,
Well,
it
yeah,
was all right. Listen to me talk about how it's all right for 45 minutes. No one's going to want to do that. They want to
no.
see, oh, this
Yes
is
or
the
no?
best. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the best thing you've ever seen, or it's complete, trash. I
Mhm.
fell squarely in the middle. I think it was a great movie going experience. Will I ever watch it again, like just on TV? Probably not. I just turn on the original Top Gun. I might watch YouTube compilations of some of those dogfights that they do because those are
Yeah.
spectacular. But as a movie, I'm like, it's, it kind of like the Munsters.
Mhm.
It's refreshing because it has a reverence for a 35-year-old, 36-year-old property, but it doesn't try and change what it is to fit with what people think 2022 audiences want.
Right.
It is unabashedly Top Gun, and it's a new, in many ways, improved version of Top Gun, but it's still recognizable as that.
Mhm.
And I think the Munsters is kind of the same way, and that's again why, on the thumbnail for this video is probably going to have something about like this is one of the best movies of the year. And I'm perfectly fine with people like down voting that, just on the title or the thumbnail alone. I've watched the Munsters. If you have and you feel opposite, that's fine. If you haven't watched the Munsters and you feel opposite of me, then I would say you need to do some correction, and then we can have a discussion.
I know some people on my news feed who have very unflinchingly admitted they're like, yeah, I'm watching the Munsters again. Whatever. They don't care if people are judging. There's people that are really enjoying. You know, we need light films occasionally. This drive to have something that's supposed to have meaning, either a commentary or a message or whatever. It's in all honesty, I think why people like Maverick, and many a number of years ago why Mad Max Fury Road for me is one of the best movies that I've watched in the last 2 decades. I am not afraid to say that,
Yeah.
because it's a film that uses a simple formula. It's entertaining. It's there what it's there. Now, granted, yeah, Fury Road had a little bit more message than Maverick, but still, it's there. But there's nothing wrong with that if you're entertained. Movies, yes, they're meant to move you, and yes, there's awards and everything, but at the end of the day, it's entertainment. It's supposed to be entertaining, and I found the Munsters to be like entrancingly quirky and weird entertaining to where there were parts where I didn't quite care for it, but at the same time I'm like, I can't look away because I am just, my brain is just so fascinated because I haven't watched something this psychedelic in a long time.
Well, you're talking about award stuff, and that's something that I think Maverick, Fury Road, for as dark and kind of violent as that movie got in some cases, and the Munsters, they're very hopeful
Mm-hmm.
movies. I mean,
Yes.
you said that people are watching these serious awards films to find like meaning and stuff. The meaning of life doesn't, I don't know what exactly the meaning of life is, but there is also authenticity in the idea that people can live happy, fulfilling lives,
No.
and that not everything is darkness and depression and unfairness and the system's against me and no one's ever going to make anything unless you're a billionaire. There are plenty of movies with those messages out there, and there are not enough movies where it's just like, you know what? Things can be okay. If you got friends, you got people you love and stuff you care about, you can be quite well adjusted in this weird world.
You can, and we're heading into we're in spooky season now, as a lot of people call it, as I refer to it as well, for horror films. So I watch them year round. One of the things that does frustrate me, and don't get me wrong, I love my horror films. I watch so many horror films, indie, from the microest budget to the biggest budget. What frustrates me with the trend, and it's not on every film, but a lot of films, is the nihilistic ending for a lot of horror films. A lot of horror films. Now, granted, yes, I know the genre, but you can create a horror film that doesn't necessarily have to have one of those endings to where, oh, everybody dies, or oh, they died, but they're just walking into something worse, type of thing. And I always go back to Overlord is one of the ones that surprised me. The one that's going to be the closest thing we ever get to a Wolfenstein 3D movie. Face it, folks, we'll never actually get a Wolfenstein 3D movie. Overlord is going to be the
Mark, we got a
closest.
Munsters movie. Never say never.
Okay, we did get a Monsters movie, but it's the closest thing that you're ever going to get to that. And that film, a little bit of spoiler, but that film actually ends on an upbeat note. It's a horror film, and you don't think it is because it's a horror slash war picture. So you're watching this going, oh man, I can see where this is going. And it ends actually a bit hopeful. And you're just like, wow, that really moved it up a notch for me, because I was like, that is cool, but it is a bit of a rarity for a lot of horror stuff. It like they feel like, well, no, we can't. Yeah, they lived, but they're traveling, and oh, their car got sucked into hell. Now, if we do a sequel, they're going to be in hell, and everything they did and sacrificed, yeah, well, they're just going to be put through the ringer 10 times more. You, you know, um, and you're right. If films nowadays, it reminds me of the Matrix. I know we go a little longer, but it reminds me of what the Matrix was. The second one, Reloaded, I think it was, or whatever. When he meets the programmer, was that in the second? That was in the second
I
one,
think
was
so.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, where he meets Colonel Sanders. Anyway, uh,
Or Will Ferrell from the
well,
MTV Movie Award parody that year.
yeah, either one. The guy said, he said this was the fifth iteration of the Matrix. We tried it the first four times and tried to make a utopian experience, but your bodies rejected it. Uh, we are rather programmed to reject, and I feel it myself. Don't get me wrong, I am included, to reject something that might be overly saccharine, even if it's well made as far as a movie, overly happy or saccharine or family friendly. We're kind of geared towards rejecting that, going, oh, that's so fake. Regardless if the film may be really great or not, you're just like, it's too sweet. Yeah. You know?
Well, but that's the thing, is like it's not a black and white thing of like you can have happiness or you can have like absolute
Yeah.
nihilism. Life is about the balance.
Mhm.
The part of the whole thing with the Matrix was we can't give people utopia because they inherently have to struggle. They have to,
Right.
overcome things and work through problems so they can experience happiness and build up that kind of bank. And then we throw more adversity towards them and we
Mhm.
see how kind of things go. Now the Matrix took it in a completely,
Yeah.
bonkers direction. It was all about mind control and turning us into batteries. But that's the other thing is like, I feel like a lot of these movies are made by young this is gonna sound weird, but like young people. And I understand
Mhm.
because I used to be one of those nihilistic, 20-year-olds like, "Oh, the world's all full of darkness and pain and whatever, and Clive Barker, man." But now that I'm, middle aged and I've got a family and everything, I have to have hope because I'm raising kids and I don't want them to be like, yeah, fuck it. Just drop out of school. You're never gonna make it. Might as well just get a job as a lawyer or like selling drugs. It does
Insurance,
kind of
selling insurance. There you go.
there you go. It does kind of recalibrate your thinking to say, like,
Mhm.
yeah, it can be a bit rough sometimes, but you have the ability to change your course. And I'm not talking about if you get hit by a truck and you end up, in a wheelchair or something and you were a star
No.
athlete. But I'm saying a lot of people, most people I'd even wager, kind of get trapped in the paralysis of their own minds and they feel like they don't have the ability to affect things when they really do. I
Mhm.
know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but the Munsters has that kind of whimsical, hopeful quality to it that I think we need to see more of in the culture.
We do. We do need to see more of it in a culture. I mean, I've felt myself usually pulled towards that, but there's many personal reasons for it. But at the same time, I don't mind my happy ending movie. I enjoy it. So you mentioned whimsical. That's really what the Munsters is whimsical. With whimsy in that. And some films are just meant to be escapes, which what this is. It's like, and the film's not going to be made for everyone.
Hmm.
I don't mean to sound like a broken record to mention it when we've talked on my show, but I think that's another thing we have to take into account, that occasionally films aren't intended for everyone. I mean, they're intended to be entertaining for as many people as possible, but at the same time, not. And why I say that is there was so much criticism about Bad Moms, and if you look at the way, the comedy and Bad Moms Christmas, both of them,
Hmm.
not phenomenal films, but anyway, if you look at who found them very appealing and who didn't, you'll find the target demographic, the majority, not all, but the majority of those critics really enjoyed the film. And those who weren't the target demographic, which was, mothers, who have dealt with this, were like, oh, it's not fun. Oh, vulgar. Yeah, it's one of those things where occasionally you will get films that aren't necessarily made for everyone, and that's okay. Now, and that's not saying you can't critique it if you want, but as long as you have that understanding, I'll fully admit in some of my reviews, I go, look, I enjoyed it. I may not have enjoyed it as much as others, but again, I'm not the target demographic. You know what I mean? And I think people lose that as well, is that not everything is going to be for everybody.
Right. But I will say that I went into this movie, mentally with my arms crossed, almost thinking like, hey, here's another Rob's I've ripped apart his last handful of movies, I think
Sure.
even on podcasts, and
Yep.
it's not that I want to because as I mentioned, I'm a Rob Zombie fan. I like the way he makes
Hmm.
movies. I think some of his films are absolutely brilliant. I just haven't liked what he's been doing lately, and when I see the trailer for this and I see all the discussion around it, I'm like, here's just gonna be another misguided flop from a guy I once respected. This reminds me of why I respect him so much, and it makes me hopeful for what he can do in the future.
Hmm.
If he decides to go back to slashers and all this other stuff, that's fine. I'll still show up. But this is sort of like the refresh. This is like, up, I can still hold on. I don't need to turn my back on Rob Zombie just yet. And it's just so nice to be pleasantly surprised. I was one of the people going into
Hmm.
this. I'm like, I'm gonna hate this movie. I'm gonna have a great time being miserable just so I can talk about it and have some fun. But I'm talking about it and having fun because I had so much fun watching it, and it's a wonderful feeling to have.
It is. It is. It always, when a film surprises you, and subconsciously or consciously you go into it thinking, "Oh, that's just going to blow," and it doesn't. Yeah, that's always an extra good feeling. I've gotten that before on films as well. So yeah, it's the thing is, the Monsters is what it is. People were going to probably hate on just about anything Rob Zombie comes out with. I mean, you'll have some of those out there. You'll have middle of the road people go, "Well, I'll give it a chance." But I would just say to people, going in with an open mind. Oh, some of it looks like it's made for TV. It's based off of a TV show. So if it's got that aesthetic,
But I don't that's the thing
you
is I
know.
don't think it the trailer, yes. The trailer, I don't
Mhm.
know what I gotta go back and watch that because I don't know what was going on with that thing, but it looked cheap. It almost looked like it was made with temp sets or something because when you look at what's in the film, this
Mhm.
is a very cinematic, big screen, operatic kind of production.
There were a couple of shots in the beginning. It was mostly when they were tracking to the castle, where it
Sure.
looked a bit like it was shot live, like it was live TV at whatever frames per second. It had a bit of that live TV look, like that set
Almost like
look.
the opening to the Zoom in on Tales from the Crypt, the old
Right. Oh,
HBO show, yeah.
almost. And you could kind of tell that it was a different, but there was only a few shots and they were only in the beginning, which makes me wonder if they were maybe coverage or pickup shots that they had done separately, because the rest of the film didn't look like that. It looked like, what normal digital film looks like nowadays. There were just a couple of shots like that, but when you realize what type of film this is, I think, what eased me immediately, it was literally the very first frame of this film before we even got into the set. He uses the retro title card, production card, or whatever you want to call it, bumper, for the studio. Was it a Paramount or
Universal.
Universal?
Yeah.
He uses the old school, the world with the plane that's on a stick going around the globe, the old school opening. The minute I saw that, the very second, because I recognized it first frame, I'm like, oh, minute I saw that, I knew what context this film was being put into. And I immediately eased myself because it wasn't, I realized what I was in for just by using that old school versus a new school opening with that. It may sound weird, but I kind of knew what I was going to expect now after I saw that.
Yeah. I get you. I didn't quite know what to expect
Mhm.
until, like, after that scene, the opening scene with Richard Brake.
Yeah.
You know, I think any other actor, I might have been, like, a little bit concerned, but I know what he is capable of. So
Right.
just to see him do something completely different and open it up, I'm like, "Aha, this is him doing, like, a
Mhm.
Vincent Price kind of, mad scientist or, like Vincent Price doing Peter Cushing doing
Yeah.
Dr. Frankenstein." Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that's I think
Oh yeah.
we've
Yeah.
barely talked about the plot of this thing, but that's fine because it's basically a sitcom plot stretched over 2 hours that doesn't sound like an endorsement, but it totally works. Um, yeah,
People can look on IMDb for the summary. What you see in the summary is exactly what this film is. It's not like it's going deep. You
right.
know. But it is what it is, unapologetically slow, unflinching. And I give mad respect for Rob Zombie to doing something like this,
Yeah,
because I would have never, if I would have, you told me when I saw House of a Thousand Corpses, you would get, you would go from that, you get the monsters from the same filmmaker. I'd be like, what crack are you smoking? And where can I find some? Because yeah, just
yeah. I it's a really weird, wild evolution these last, 21 years, but I'm glad we got here, and I the at the end of this movie, I was like, I want a sequel, or I would love to see, like, a 6-episode half-hour sitcom directed by Rob Zombie using this cast and crew. I think that'd be something really remarkable.
I think, and I sorry to bring it up again. I mentioned it in my review that I don't know if I'll actually drop, but I probably will. That same thing. I'm like, I'm wondering if people would have been able to accept this material a little more if it was released a little bit more episodically, in a limited series. Maybe people, rather than, maybe it's too much for them to take in. I'm not sure, but you're right. If they did a limited series from this, I would watch it. Keep it to a brisk 20-25 minutes, like, like the original. Don't have to go an hour at all. You just keep it 20-25 minutes. I think you got some material here that you could have some fun with.
Yeah, I mean, you could even take it out of the 60s, like, maybe the Count comes up with some spell that propels them into the 2022, and
Yeah.
you get them dealing with the modern issues and things. That could be fun. But they used to do this all the time. Would have a sitcom that it would maybe go off the air, and then you'd bring them back a few years later, like they did the Munsters Go Home. Like they had a TV movie version of the sitcom. This is almost just
Yes.
like that in reverse, where they're kicking it off with a movie, and then maybe they'll do six episodes. Given the reviews and the ratings and stuff, I don't know if that would ever happen, but I'd be all there for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately, given Netflix's past history, I highly doubt that they would give him a green light for more of this. It's again, they let him do his thing, and then it's just like, okay, you've got it. There you go. There you go, Rob. We good now. We're
You
good.
gotta burn those inflammatory pictures that you have of our executive team. No, I'm
It's
just
like,
disappointed. The only thing you can buy of this is like the merchandise is like a Munsters 2022 T-shirt.
yeah,
Like there is that print, that rock poster of Herman Munster with the giant green bug eyes. I'm like, I want that hanging in my house. Where can I get that?
I want that
But
album. He had the record album. I looked online to see if they were selling like a replica or whatever, the album of him, because he's a musician and he actually Herman records a record. Um, uh, I want that record. I was like, dude, I want that vinyl. I'm like, where
dude,
is it?
we're there in the rock club and he's got the leather daddy outfit on,
Yeah.
and it's like the whole song is just his terrible jokes set to music. I'm like, I would listen to this. I know they did put out a Munsters, like a limited edition vinyl for this.
Yeah. It's
That's
the
got
regular
like,
street. Yeah.
yeah, it's got like 19 sides on it or something. I don't know how that works, but yeah, I just settle for some MP3s. But yeah, anyway, that's the Munsters 2022. Mark, I'm so glad we agreed on this because I didn't know what I was gonna say if you
I,
hated it.
I enjoyed it. I did not enjoy it maybe as much as you or my wife, but I found a lot of entertainment. And it's actually one of those things to where I may have to watch again, because now, especially since I know what I'm in for, I can maybe, look a little more for some other things. But on the whole, far bigger surprise and far more entertaining than I ever thought it was going to be from the trailer. And I think some people's minds were, I'm not going to speak for them fully, I'm just saying from my opinion, from my perspective, it seems like some people's minds were made up even before a frame one hit the screen, just because of people involved. So,
And I'm one of them,
mhm.
but I still sat down and watched it, and it opened like Herman Munster with his giant 7 feet heels, or his platforms, kicked
Yeah,
that door open and opened up my mind, and I was able to have a good time. But
uh,
yeah, thanks, Mark.
you bet.
I Special Mark Productions, everybody, check it out. Join us every week, every Tuesday night, starting at 9:30 p.m. Central. We are live on Mark's YouTube channel, Special Mark Productions, for the Spoiler Room. This month of October, we're going to be talking about Hellraiser. The original we're talking about on Tuesday. So tomorrow, when this drops,
Mm.
we're going to talk about the Hulu remake, Hellraiser 2, and then changing up a bit, The Cell, the old
Mm.
Jennifer Lopez movie from 2000. So it's gonna be very exciting stuff. But yeah, just check it out. Be sure to subscribe to Mark's stuff, because he's always doing something. And you are, dare I say it, I'm just gonna call you an award-winning horror
Oh,
fan.
don't.
I won't
Oh,
I won't bring it up.
okay, okay.
I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a thing.
All right, man. Thanks a lot,
You bet.
and we'll catch you later, dude.
You bet.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks.